Welcome to the Bureau of Lost Culture. I'm Stephen, and here we are again, excavating the lost histories, subcultures and countercultures from the shadows, the side alleys and the in-between spaces. And in this episode, we're casting our net into the waters of early 1990s South London, a time when rave culture was mutating. London's squats were pulsing with creativity, yes, there still were squats, and a strange new sound world was blooming in the back rooms and basements, drifting, kaleidoscopic, defiantly uncommercial. This is the story of Telepathic Fish, the ambient afterparty, created by the Openmind Collective, one of whom is my buddy Kevin Foakes, known better to many as DJ Food of Ninja Tune. Now, before chill out became a marketing category, before ambient became a streaming playlist, Telepathic Fish carved out a communal space of strange beauty and deep listening. An urban utopian experiment made with turntables, psychedelic installations, living room lamps, photocopied zines, and a lot of imagination. A meeting place for bohos, ravers, multimedia explorers, and a new wave of electronic musicians. Aphex Twin, Global Communication, Nightmares on Wax, Autechre, Andrea Parker, Scanner, they all passed through the doors of Telepathic Fish parties. And now with a new amazing vinyl compilation and a beautifully illustrated 20-page booklet, the Telepathic Fish has resurfaced as a reminder of what DIY culture can do when technology, community and imagination collide. And we're going to dive deep into that lost world with Kev Foakes, DJ, designer, archivist and cultural custodian, to talk about installations, ambient activism, Mira Calix, illegal Roundhouse raves, ambient zine squatting, and the peculiar magic that happens when young people get together in a room and decide to do something creative. So let's go fishing. Kev, welcome back to the Bureau.
Hi, Stephen.
There's going to be a lot of fish references in
That's
this.
Fine.
You know that, right?
It's normal.
Well, you know what? We've been wanting to fish around in your past for a long time. You were last here, was it with John Moore, talking about sampling?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I've lost count of how many times I've been on this podcast in a different capacity. The first one was Flexi Discs. There's been underground comics. There's been psychedelic light shows.
Forgot about the comics, yeah. That was back in the day, wasn't it? Early on, yeah. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. This compilation's sort of ignited something in people this year, it seems. It seems that we've, to coin a phrase, caught a wave of an ambient resurgence, and a lot of people have been coming out of the woodwork to sometimes recount stories of, you know, coming to the parties back in the day and things. And I mean, I haven't really talked about it that much in the past, and it's been a part of my past which is before what a lot of people would know from me as being part of Ninja Tune and DJ Food. That came later, but this was...
It's quite formative for you, isn't it? All the elements of what you do now were all there, weren't they? I mean, how does it feel sort of, you know, seeing this Telepathic Fish resurface after all these years?
It's been fantastic. It's time, definitely, that sort of cycle of nostalgia has come round. And I've always wanted to do something like this, but the time hasn't been right. And I think with the passing of Chantel a few years ago, Mira Calix, who was part of the Openmind crew, it felt like we really should tell this story now.
We're going to hear more about Chantel. What about the myth of the Telepathic Fish? Let's get that out there.
The name was coined from a trip I took to visit a Rastafarian over in Tulse Hill, Brixton, somewhere. Guy who talked about the fish and the importance of the fish.
As in the fish singular? Like
fish in symbolism, religion, architecture, myth, law. He had this a sort of a screed that he would recite to people. Everyone got it who went through the door. The postman, the gas meter man, all his friends of friends. It was to do with the fact that feeding of 5,000, taking the fish, everyone gets a telepathic link with whoever else has taken the fish. It brings us together and things like this. I didn't really fully understand.
I don't remember that bit in the Bible. I mean, I remember the feeding of the 5,000, but there's nothing about telepathy as far as I remember.
You know, he was...
Okay, this is the Brixton version.
It was his version, yeah. I wish I could find him and go back and, you know, inquire a little bit more and maybe remember a bit more. But anyway, I was there and this bowl was produced with these small fish. They weren't goldfish, they were something smaller. And he said, "Oh, would you like to take a fish?" And I was in a phase in my life where I was very open-minded about things. All of a sudden, I'd just come out of a relationship which I felt was quite stifling, and I was up for anything, shall we say. And so He stuck his tongue out, put the fish on his tongue, said, just swallow like this. And he said, stick your tongue out. And he slapped this fish on my tongue and I swallowed it. And that was my taking of the fish.
You swallowed a live fish?
Yes.
So it's a bit like Ozzy Osbourne and the Bat, sort of ambient version.
Well, no, it was a much more soft version, shall we say. Nothing was chewed. It was literally swallowed.
Like an oyster.
It was tiny. It was tiny. Right. I don't really even remember. And at the time, in the situation I was in, it seemed
like the right thing to do.
Nothing was going to happen. I wasn't under any sort of horrible pressure or anything, but I felt, let's go with this, see where it goes.
Did you feel different after you'd swallowed it?
Not really. I came back and told all my flatmates, you're never going to guess what happened. Been put into a situation that was completely out of my normal comfort zone.
That's what's important, isn't it, in a way? Particularly when you're young, isn't it? If something comes up, I'm just going to say yes to it.
I'm just going to go with this, yeah. And really, in the scheme of things, it might not have given me a telepathic link, but it gave me a name because we were looking for a name for a party.
That was the fish. We're going to move towards the telepathic fish parties, but the Openmind Collective, who were these people who started this scene off?
So the Openmind Collective were a group of 4 of us that lived in a house in East Dulwich on Goose Green. Mario Aguera, who was living there when I arrived in the summer of 1992, he was a computer programmer who'd come from uni. He'd done his raving. And my friend David Villard, who I was at Camberwell College with, moved in because we had a vacant room. And then there was another room there, and shortly after Christmas 93, Chantel Passamonte arrived through friends of friends, and we were open mind, just as a sort of collective thing. We by the time Chantel arrived, we'd already done 2 house parties.
Did you have sort of unofficial roles, or was it just the kind of chaotic, creative collective?
It was one of those things where you got on with what needed to get done, and those roles emerged later as people's strengths came to the fore. Mario and I were very much the DJs and the music people. David was more art, decor, and that also fell in graphic design with me as well, because we were at college, Art College, Camberwell. Chantel's role was one of organisation, I think. She was incredibly well connected on the clubbing scene, and she basically pulled us out of doing house parties into clubbing and squat environments through her connections.
So you guys have moved in together. Okay, you're just young dudes. You've got a house. Let's have a party.
Yes,
right?
Just house party, but with a difference in that we had a chill-out room, which was definitely wasn't the second room, if you know what I mean. We put as much effort into decorating the house and the rooms to make them completely different environments. We went to town on flyers, vacuum-formed fish that we cut out. Everyone got one of those on entry. We had a dance room downstairs with strobes, and I think we had a smoke machine as well. And we decorated all the walls, the ceilings. Upstairs was all mattresses and sort of sheets on the walls and ceilings to make it sort of womb-like. Fish mobiles everywhere, UV lights everywhere, and that was the chill out.
That's the first party.
That's the first party.
That's a lot of effort for the first party. Well, that's amazing.
This is students doing
a lot of time.
Art students doing what art students
right.
do. You know, it was like, we're going to put a house party on, and you know, we're going to put as much creativity into it.
Yeah, you're not going to go in the off license, buy some cans.
No,
put a tape in the tape.
I don't even know how much alcohol was there. To
right.
be fair, it was the early 90s. You know, this is raving days. The first party was very much a rave with the chill out room, and that was, we were aping what we were going to as ravers, which was local squat parties basically. And we went to some clubs like Club Dog and things like that. That was the norm then, is that you had the main room and then you had the chill out room.
So this was quite transitional time, isn't it then? What happens with you guys is that the chill out aspect of it became the thing.
Yeah, that's right. But the second party was the first telepathic fish party. The first party was more just a house party, but between the two is when the fish got taken. So then we had a name for it. We had a form for it. Chantel came on board and basically pushed us out of the house into the wider world through her connections. The second party, which was the first telepathic fish party, was so popular, we had hundreds of people turning up, and we knew that we couldn't do it in the house because, you know, there was going to be serious problems with space if nothing else. But so then we started looking around, and we ended up in a squat in Brixton on Tunstall Road, just over the road from the main station. And that was another challenge because it was way bigger than we had actually accounted for, to be honest.
It's come up on this show a number of times, the importance of squatting in London, other cities in the UK, and obviously, you know, New York, Berlin, Paris.
Yep.
The squat, the unofficial occupation, let's put it that way,
yeah,
of somebody else's property, absolutely crucial in so many scenes, isn't it? And in London, squatting right back to the 60s, basically, it seems inconceivable in 2025 that there was big, empty, available properties.
Absolutely.
And it was Chantal who got you guys, like, let's get out of the house, let's do this properly, or let's do it on a bigger scale.
Well, she knew the people, she had the connections with the squats. Me and David and Mario didn't. She was just very, very good at networking. And there was a huge squat scene around Camberwell where we lived as well. And that dates back to the 80s. There's quite a lot of anarchist squats, and Camberwell Grove, which is now one of the, the most pricey streets in that whole area. We used to be a great big squat scene there. And that was where Mixmaster Morris was living, the Irresistible Force, who was an ambient DJ who we got in for the first Telepathic Fish party. He came down and played in our kitchen, and he was a very pivotal figure. He was collected musically and on the party scene, the rave scene. Chantal was collected on the squat scene, and we just jumped on that. And Morris provided me with the contact for Matt Black from Coldcut, who came and VJ'd at the first squat party. Computer animated visuals at the time, which were quite new. VJing was quite new.
I think it was the first time that he'd done it in public, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Which is amazing to think about what happened with Coldcut subsequently.
Exactly.
They became the professors of that stuff.
Well,
right?
he was doing that all the time, and he was talking about it in the media, and I assumed that he'd done it, for real, but it transpired that later that was actually the first time he'd publicly done it. He'd been messing about in the studio.
It's funny because then you end up later working with them at Ninja Tune, right?
Exactly.
Well,
that was the start of a beautiful relationship. Basically, me and Matt hit it off immediately. Just sort of similar heads, and
so for somebody who showed up at this second party in the squat, just give us a description of what it'd be like. So I get out the tube at Brixton. Yes. Maybe I've heard about it, or someone's given me a flyer, or I heard about the first one. I thought, that sounds cool.
You come out the tube, you cross the main crossing, straight ahead of you there's a little side road that winds itself back behind the main shopping bit into sort of a residential street, and there is a squat there which used to be, I believe, the dole office.
For sort of people from other countries, dole in this country means
unemployment
benefits, social security. That's an important countercultural location in lots of people.
That had long since ceased and had gone to another place. And so you go in the front door, very unimposing building at all, 2 stories high. The ground floor is this huge open warehouse space, basically, with a few pillars. There would have been sound system that we rented, bought in. There were UV vanners, UV lights, mattresses, cushions, blankets on the floor, projectors, which leads through to the psychedelic lighting later. Matt Black with his screen. I think the screen was hanging down in the middle of the room, actually, sort of halfway rather than on a wall. A DJ booth mounted up on some old filing cabinets. I believe there was an upstairs, but most of it was off limits because the people who were squatting there were living up there. But there was definitely somewhere to go make tea upstairs in a rickety old staircase.
So it's a sort of sensory experience, lights, images.
Sensory. Yes.
Wonderful, strange.
No strobes, music. No smoke. People would smoke in the squat, though. That was the main difference between today. Is that obviously it's a squat, you can do what you like. You can sit on the floor, you can smoke.
What's this about mattresses?
Well, we used to drag mattresses off the street to basically sort of fill up some of the floor space because we wanted people to sit down rather than dance. And, you've got to sit on something soft. So we drive around in a lorry and drag mattresses off the street and sort of drape them with rugs and things. And obviously some of them were grottier than others, but
grim.
There's been a few things in the press about sort of soggy mattresses. I think there was only one soggy mattress that a particular journalist, David Toop, managed to sit on.
As somebody who doesn't dance, I fully approve of this situation when dancing was discouraged, right?
It wasn't discouraged as much as there weren't really any beats. There weren't any beats.
Right.
People sometimes stand up and sway or whatever, but
it sounds terrific. So all-nighter?
All-nighter, I don't really recall, but yeah, we'd start late afternoon and go through to the early hours. I do remember coming out into the blinking into the sunshine. But
drugs, psychedelics, weed?
That was all there, yes.
Yeah. It sounds more of that than a booze scene.
The thing is, I think without that, it wouldn't have worked, to be honest. We certainly didn't have a bar. We had a tea making station.
I fully approve of that. As a teetotal that drinks tea.
Time becomes elastic on certain substances, so I think that almost played to our advantage in a lot of ways. We didn't really think that part of it through. We just thought we're going to put these parties on there's an audience for it.
Okay, before we go further, let's have a listen to a track from the compilation. This is Golden Girls, Kinetic, Morley's Apollo remix. What about that?
Well, this is an actual orbital alias of the time. The original was a big club hit, and David Morley was an artist from Europe who, for me, did the definitive remix of this. Just a beautiful progression of just hairs on the back of the neck moments.
Where was the music that was getting played coming from?
There was a new shop in the centre of Soho, very, very close to where we're actually sitting now, called Ambient Soho, which had opened in the summer of 1993, which we were also involved with quite heavily, both working in decorating, designing for, run by a guy called Rocket, and he would sell a lot of the latest ambient records, which you could buy also at Fat Cat, which was another record shop over in Covent Garden. A lot of it was getting played on Kiss on the evening shows. The Orb were a huge band, the Future Sound London were a huge band. You know, these were groups who were having chart hits, and more often than not they would have ambient mixes, if not ambient tracks.
Mixmaster Morris said, if you're seeing an old record in this charity shop with hippies and synthesizers on the cover, get it.
Yes.
So you mixed in some of that old stuff.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, Morris was the oracle for us on a lot of this stuff. His flat in Camberwell was a sort of regular pilgrimage that we would go round. He would make the tea, and then he would just infuse about records, which is completely what Morris does. And he would make us mixtapes of different things, and he introduced us to everything. He introduced me to krautrock. I'd never heard of krautrock before him. Can, Tangerine Dream, the Berlin School as we call it now. I mean, we knew about the basics. We knew about Eno, but our stuff was things like the KLF and the Orb and the Shaman and Future Sound of London. You know, it was the contemporary stuff. But he knew that. He also knew way, way deeper. He knew about the German scene that was happening with people like Pete Namlook and Fax Records in Germany. Also the Detroit techno stuff, Carl Craig and people like that. The Aphex Twin, B12, Black Dog, Autechre, all of what would become known as a sort of, ironically, artificial intelligence series on Warp for the next few years.
I mean, speaking of that Autechre and global communication, Tony Morley, Andrea Parker, Aphex Twin came through, right?
Aphex Twin played at the first squat party in Brixton, actually, yeah, when another DJ who was booked couldn't arrive, and Morris opened his address book and said, I'll get Richard to come along, which he duly did, and played for a couple of hours, I think, and I don't even remember if we paid him or what we paid him. This was 1993. it just happened, you know.
You know, he's still a bit of a mystery, isn't he, Aphex Twin? And I remember I came to London, I think he lived in an old bank building in Elephant and Castle, didn't he?
He was living,
he made so much money from his remixes. Because it was the time when the big record labels had to get a remix of everything that they did, right?
Yes.
And of course, as ever, they're always trying to catch the cool vibe, aren't they? The cool kids.
That's right.
So there was a time when he just spent 24/7 basically doing remixes of all sorts of people, right?
Yes.
But although after time, I think he just handed him one of his own tracks.
Well,
didn't
the legend goes with the Lemonheads remix is that a courier arrived at his door to pick up the Lemonheads remix, which he hadn't done, so he just pulled the DAT off the shelf and gave them that. And that was it.
Somebody told me from a record label that he turned in a remix, and the A&R people, were sort of like listening to it and saying like, this doesn't sound anything like the original track. And he said, yeah, it's the spill from the headphones. The remix just made it up. An incredibly influential figure and very busy at the time, and he was pumping out so much stuff, lots of other things, but a lot of very groundbreaking ambient music.
Absolutely,
as well, right?
Yeah. He went from techno to rave to ambient to, later on sort of drum and bass stuff and everything in between, and then got into videos and stuff with Chris Cunningham.
Speaking of Aphex, we've got in one of his many roles here, Caustic Window, Cordilatron.
That was from one of his first ever 12s on Reflex. I think we're the first people to license a Caustic Window track to a comp since the 90s. Always loved this track. crossed paths a number of times back in the 90s and noughties. He came to the Solid Steel Club when Luke Vibert played in about 2004, and just sat behind me while I DJ'd, which was fun. You know, he seemed to enjoy himself. Yeah, I'd just bump into him in like music shops in the West End sometimes, or at gigs and things.
Yeah, this incredibly sort of golden age and just produced a huge amount of stuff, and then kind of just disappeared, didn't he? Just decided, I'm done. Comes back a bit every now and again.
Yeah, I don't know really what the personal story is there, but definitely after Window Liquor, things seemed to slow down a little bit.
Autechre, Global Communication, Tony Morley, they all came through, didn't they? All through the Telepathic Fish.
A lot of those people were friends. They just hung out with us, and we'd do gigs with them and stuff like that. You know, Andrew Parker was a very good friend of Chantel's, and Tony Morley was working at Beggar's Banquet for AD when we met him before he'd started the Leaf label, and he would come along and DJ.
Did you have any sense then that they were going to be sort of these future heavyweights?
Well, no, because they were just mates who came round, you know. You remember Autechre coming round and setting up their gear in my bedroom for a gig that they had the next day. I just went and stayed at my girlfriend's, and they stayed in my room and worked out their set on the bedroom floor, you know.
Well, let's talk about tech. Were you sort of borrowing stuff and duct taping it together? And
the thing about me is that I was DJing from the mid-'80s, and I was a DJ that was into hip-hop. And when I arrived at the flat, I had turntables, I had Technics and a mixer and everything. And Mario was very instantly taken with that. He didn't have Technics at the time, but he very quickly got them. So we had 4 turntables in the house. Actually, I had 3 turntables in my bedroom, so which was great for mixing because you had the extra deck for layering things up. And then I got CDs as well, you know, just basic CD players. Not, this is pre-CDJs and things like that. Effects on the mixers, and, you know, rigging up guitar pedals and stuff like that. It was about layering, basically.
You were layering visuals as well, right? And you're driving around London in a van picking up stuff, and it sounds amazing. It all sounds a huge amount of work.
It was a lot of work.
How many nights did you do then?
We did a couple in the old Dole office in Brixton. Then we moved over to what had been another Dole office, another side of Brixton, and we did one there. By this time, Megatripolis was running, the club that Fraser Clark started in Heaven, and we very quickly got in the door there because Chantel knew all those people, and we started doing the ambient room in Megatripolis regularly. We did the Fish in Heaven parties.
It was part of this bigger sort of constellation, wasn't it? I mean, you mentioned the Megatripolis,
yeah,
Big Chill. You got Ambient Soho, the record store up here and stuff, Cold Cut, Solid Steel, and it was like a bigger scene, wasn't it?
It was. I'd say we were one of the first. There was the Reflective parties before us with Space Time Continuum, and there was before that the Land of Oz, which was the Orb and Jimmy Corti and Youth, again at Heaven. But, you know, we were part of the beginning of this movement that came out.
DIY as well, wasn't it?
Very much so. Inspired by the DIY squat parties that we went to, and then we'd eventually put them on, and then we'd bring them into the clubs. So we took away a little element of that organisational aspect for ourselves after a while, because we could just rock up to a place and decorate it and play. We didn't have to worry about all the promotion and things like that.
This thing which has run through your entire kind of career, isn't it? You've got a very strong visual identity. You know, street art, comics,
yes,
right, graphic novels of your design. And as part of all this, you had Mind Food, right?
Oh, Mind Food was a fanzine that we did, an ambient fanzine, whatever that is, which we put together as a sort of newsletter, basically, for ambient music, because it wasn't really being written about in any length in the press. You'd get a few mentions in some of the weeklies like NME and Melody Maker and in their dance pages, which is as much likely to get something in ID or something like that. There certainly weren't that many features on this stuff around that time, and because we had an in with the Underground network, we could publish things like Morris's, not only his top 10s, but his actual diary of where he was playing, and so a couple of these things got published. We had a recipe from Aphex Twin, which was kind of tongue-in-cheek. We had one of the first interviews with Seafeel, people like that, Scanner. There was a lot of people around, and it was easy to talk to them and collect up all this stuff.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because with the graphics, like I said, the street art, the graffiti, cut up, collage, comics, all that stuff. Because actually what happened really with DJ culture, generally, that all got stripped out, didn't it, in a way? It was probably the time when there's most connection of like DIY, party, music and graphics mixing together, right?
It's all pre-computer. It's as desktop publishing is coming in.
Right.
And we were learning that at college, but we still didn't really know how to put a magazine together on a computer, let's say. We were still of the cut and paste age. And so certainly with some of the Mind Foods, especially the early ones, you can see that cut and paste. And you can see some pretty terrible early computer graphics as well. We're literally learning how to do print. Again, it was an exercise. Oh, we're art students, we can do this.
Let's have another bit of music. Nightmares on Wax, Night's Interlude.
This is, to me, early trip hop. This is a big Quincy Jones loop from George at Nightmares on Wax that came out. I think it was the intro to their first album on Warp back in the Bleep era. But I always used to play this and not know if it was a little bit too hip-hop-ish. But then I had some guy run up to me in the middle of the Mega Trip and said, I love this track.
Let's talk about the Roundhouse and this illegal New Year's Eve party. I mean, the Roundhouse has come up on this show a lot because, for anybody who doesn't know, it's in Camden. It's an old railway turntable, so a place where they bring the the trains in and they can use this huge turntable to sort of spin them around, work on them, and then sort of send them out through a different door. So it's this big round building, brick, I think Victorian, I assume, right?
It must be, yeah.
And by the 60s, it had sort of become empty. It started to get used for some major countercultural stuff.
Well, the IT party was there, wasn't it? The launch party for IT.
Yeah, one of the big psychedelic gigs was there.
UFO's The Doors and Jefferson Airplane was there, wasn't it? And then it went on to become...
experimental theatre.
Yeah, Jeff Dexter had his parties there. Into the 70s, actually. Yeah.
So then it sort of fell into disrepute again, didn't it? And was quite banged up.
It was very in disrepair. The roof had some of it had fallen in. I know Spiral Tribe had a New Year's Eve Christmas
talked about
thing.
That, yeah.
Probably 2 years before we got there.
Because that went a bit pear-shaped, didn't it? Yeah, Mark told us about that because, Mark D'Angelo, because they just got out of hand, too many people. The security guards were like taking bungs and stuff. And I'm surprised that you actually got in there because the police had got involved when Spiral Tribe were there. These days, you imagine it just with a big sort of security detail around it, but 2 years later, you managed to get in there.
I can't claim to have broken in or anything like that. It was already done and dusted when we arrived. It was a group called the Rainbow Tribe had organised this New Year's Eve gig. It was a little ad hoc, and there was everything from sort of experimental theatre troupes called the Space Goats, and then there was us, Telepathic Fish, Mixmaster Morris and Matt Black, part of that. So it was kind of a vaguely organised circus, and for the first 5 hours after we got in on New Year's Eve, there was no power, and we had to basically sort of sit in the freezing cold for the new year. But somebody got a generator up, and I ended up playing first on New Year's Day, like literally in the morning as the sun came up. And Morris played, Matt Black played, Chantel played for hours, and then went home and had some sort of asthma attack, I think. But there was a guy called Nick Mindscapes who's still around and is crazy as you like. He'd got in and he'd rigged up this absolutely huge screen. I'm not kidding you, around half of the venue, which he'd scaled the walls himself with no safety ropes or anything and put up, and it had this huge banner up which he was projecting onto, and it looked great, but then the power kept going, and but people kept coming and going. All New Year's Day was basically like it was open. People just came in. We would come and go and get food in Camden and come back, and someone else would be DJing. And of course it was light, so there were no projections in the day, but at night people were setting fires in the middle of the floor and to keep warm and get some light when the power went.
And the authorities left you alone?
Yeah, I wasn't that aware back in those days, you know. There were many reasons for that. But as the day wore on, this is New Year's Day, you know, more and more people came, and it got really, really packed and big, and obviously the lights goes and the projections go on, and it became really, really good. The New Year's Eve party was an anticlimax, but the New Year's Day party was the real thing, and Mixmaster Morris got back on and played brilliantly, and we just went all night again, but halfway through the night it got hijacked by another sound system. It was almost like someone had it lurking in the shadows, and we got this vague idea, what's going on? What is going on here? These sound system rolled out of the shadows and just turned on and started playing dance party. It was ravey. And so we'd been playing all this ambient stuff, and then half the crowd sort of went, great, and got into it and started dancing. And half of us were just like, what are you doing? You know, you're ruining my trip, man, or whatever, you know. And sort of scattered to the four corners. And I can't really remember how long that went on for, but then it got shut down. Memories are vague.
Was that sort of significant in a way, the kind of coming of a new music? So that was your peak in a way, wasn't it?
That was one of the sort of bigger parties. The other big party we did was when we went to Amsterdam to do this big XXX festival. That was probably the peak, because we were playing in this sort of dome that was connected to a huge ex-gas canister, and in the main room was Orbital and Autechre and Mixmaster Morris and Higher Intelligence Agency and all these other bands, great electronica bands of the day, and it was a proper rave. Then you'd go through this tunnel that was lit by UV banners that David had painted, all the way into this sort of womb-like space that was completely different from the rave, and it was a proper chill out. We had this thing called which we called the amoeba, which was this sort of inflatable, it looked like a sort of like half of a giant conker shell, if you can imagine it, with all the spikes, but they were hooked up to a time delayed fan which would switch on and switch off. It would blow itself up, the fan would switch off, and it would then deflate, you know, and it was like this throbbing pulsing thing in the centre of the room. And in fact, I had it in my loft for 30 years, and I just pulled it out for a new party that we did to launch this album.
That was the peak, but you kept going for a bit longer. How did it end? Faded into other things, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, music and culture is moving all the time.
All the time, yeah.
You don't realise it, but 2 years is a long time. 3 years is even longer. And by the sort of mid-90s, Chantal was preparing to move to Sheffield. She was becoming Warp's publicist and later recording artist as Mira Calix. David was about to have a child. Mario was working for Hex, which was Matt Black's audiovisual thing, doing a game called Dreamware, and I was basically involved in the graphic design of Ninja Tune and as DJ Food at this point. So we were moving in different directions, and eventually we all moved out. The flat that we shared on Goose Green was the binding factor, basically. So things change and people move on, and that was a natural kind of dissolution.
I want to talk a little bit more about Chantal, because in a way one of the purposes of this compilation is a sort of tribute, a memorial to her.
Definitely to acknowledge her and her part in this formative time, which hasn't really been documented. And you know, she obviously went on to a career in music and the arts.
For listeners, you can probably tell from the way we're talking about her, she's no more. She died a few years ago now, right? And that was a shock to all her friends, very unexpected, yes. She came from South Africa, right? Was this kind of like dynamo, basically, amongst you slackers, right?
She was a very progressive woman.
Yeah.
I got out some of my diary and at one point I wrote, Chantal has had her lip pierced, and this was like 93 or something. This was completely unheard of at the time for people that I was hanging out with, and it was just she came back with this lip pierce in great pain, and she would just sort of turn up with these amazing outfits. She had so many clothes, it was unbelievable. She knew so many people. We were always on guest lists. She was this incredibly personable person, socially completely at ease, and could make you feel at ease. Gentle voice as well, and
she's one of those catalytic people as well, who brought out the best in people.
I think she did, yeah.
And very creative in herself, but also very good at making things happen, right?
She would just say to us, listen, and then she would trot out this idea she'd had, or this thing that she'd actually put in place already and that we were going to do anyway, and she knew full well. And we'd all just go, yeah, that sounds great. She was just a very, very good enabler. I think that's what made her a great publicist as well for Warp Records,
working with all those bands, and then became an artist, recording artist.
But then she moved into the art world as well. I think she realised quite quickly that her stuff wasn't club music; it was more suited to the arts, and she would, do installations and all sorts of things. And we were so proud. The year before she passed away, she was playing in the Tate's Turbine Hall. We went to see her. Right, it's like, this is Chantal. And here she is, playing in the Tate.
Kev, I think we've got time for one more. Insides, Skinned Clean.
This is lovely. This is a special DJ mix that wasn't officially released. This was a big Chantal tune from back in the day. It's sort of 10-minute, almost sort of minimalist Steve Reich-esque dance mix of a much longer piece.
So, I mean, it's got a sense of loss, obviously, and the memories and stuff for you. Put this compilation out. It's got great reviews. Rough Trade compilation of the year.
Yes,
right?
That was nice.
You had all these tracks to choose from back in the day. How did you pick which ones to put on it?
How the thing came together was that Doug Shipton, who had just wound up Finders Keepers Records and started his own Fundamental Frequencies label, approached me. I'd known him from digging circles for years, and
meaning
digging as in crate digging, record finding, DJing, right, that sort of thing, sample spotting. He had heard about Telepathic Fish through somebody he worked with. He came to me and said, I'd really like to do a compilation based on your parties. Do you have anything aside from a musical lineup that you'd like to put out? Do you have any ephemera or memorabilia? And I'm, as you well know,
a hoarder.
I like to think of it as archivist, Stephen.
Okay, all right.
So I got out several folders of stuff and said, how about all this? And he just said, we've got a compilation. So then, Mario, David and I sat down and we compiled a huge list. It was like an 11-hour playlist of stuff that we remembered personally as key records, and then divided that up. And there were sort of A-list, B-list, C-list sort of records. And there was many, many more. We could have done 10 comps easy. The trouble with a lot of ambient music is it's 10 or 20 minutes long. And when you're dealing with vinyl, that's one side.
Yeah.
We had to be careful to not include stuff that was too long.
It's a great selection.
Thank you.
When you hear it now, obviously we live in a post-internet, post-computer sampler, AI world, and does it still stand up for you, the inventiveness of it?
Oh, definitely. Every track on that comp gives me goosebumps in some ways. It brings back a memory of a person, a place, a time. We wanted to have something with Morris on it, something with Aphex on it, something with the Orb on it, all these different people that had been part of the story. We couldn't acknowledge everybody, but trying to bring that through in the music as well. Not that it's meant to be definitive in any way or form, but all of it stands up. I mean, it's difficult for me to see it.
Yeah, separate it from your actual personal experience, right? Yeah. We live in different times in all sorts of ways, right? And it's very thought-provoking and sort of quite poignant in a way for me to hear about this time in London. This is a time when young people could come to London, live together and do stuff, and there were squats and there were opportunities and there was DIY culture, and I just wonder whether where we are now, if something like that could happen again. Maybe it is happening, actually, we just don't see it because it's underground.
Absolutely.
The city's always sort of morphing and evolving in different ways, isn't it? How do you feel about that? Does it feel like that was a bit of a golden age for opportunity for young, arty, creative people with time and space to do stuff?
In as much as you had this, wealth of space that wasn't being used and could be used up to a point, yes. But I do think people find a way, because there is a need. Yeah. There's a need in certain people to do this sort of thing. And I look at what my kids do and what they tell me that, they see or hear. And, obviously we're not plugged into their world. It's not the same. But I don't believe that things like this don't go on. I'm sure they do, but they appear in different ways,
I suppose in a way I mourn the fact that property has become so commodified in the city.
Absolutely, yeah.
That particularly for the young, it's so difficult. Physically isn't the space. And then that means that there isn't the time, because, if you're renting, if you're not, from London, say, or other big cities, if you come to that city, you've probably got to work 2 jobs just to be here. So you haven't got as much time and energy as well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not just the actual space, is it?
I think things are happening, I'm hearing about ambient saunas and stuff like that now. Train arches are being turned into saunas, and ambient DJs are going and playing and things like that. And if you look at what some of the kids are listening to in terms of and doing raving wise, there's lots of raves in woods and parties in woods, and maybe that's the next logical sort of destination. Get out of the city, and or even these guys that turn up in a sort of train tunnel with a van, and they've got speakers built into the back, and they have a rave until the police come, and that's it.
And just drive off.
It's just that an hour tops, and then you're done.
They're going to find a way, right?
That you find a way, and the times you're in dictate almost. We're in a very short attention span theatre kind of era, and I'm not sure how an ambient party of 8 hours length, would that even work these days? Probably not.
Well, I suppose ambient music became commodified itself, didn't it? It's the sort of thing that you might hear whilst you're waiting to speak to somebody in the call centre. It became associated with wellness as well, didn't it?
There is that, yeah.
It's great to hear that actually, you said that at the beginning that there's this revival, this wave of new stuff coming out.
Definitely since COVID. And I found myself listening to a lot more ambient music during COVID just to keep calm, basics, mental stabilization. Yeah, there's the obvious 30-year cycle of nostalgia, things coming out, certain records getting reissued and things like that. That time is coming again, and there's a whole generation that wasn't there that sees it as a countercultural movement. And it's good music. These things have their time, and then they disappear and then they resurface, and this is the time for that. There's plenty of contemporary stuff, tons of contemporary ambient electronic music being made all the time. We're in a golden age for some of that stuff again, really. We just need someone else to put their version of this ambient party on.
So when you think back about all those telepathic fish parties, what's the sort of strangest thing that you can remember happening?
That's legal.
We're not bothered about legal or illegal in this show. It doesn't matter.
No, I can't go.
Tell me off, Mike. Kev, congratulations on the compilation. And
thank you.
Bringing the fish back up to the surface.
Yes.
It's been swimming around in the deeps all this time. Yeah. The whole DIY culture thing is still very much part of what you do, isn't it? In terms of, you're an archivist, as you said, graphic design, DJing,
shows.
Remixing, light shows. That became a big part of what you've done. You've written a book on light shows.
And the weird thing with that is it was all in there, as you said, at the beginning, but I didn't always recognise it. Yes, it definitely massively formative for me, and I know my friends that did it.
I'm always interested in this. James Hillman, the sort of Jungian psychologist, talks about the calling, he called it, but it's almost like a destiny thing, but you can only read it backwards. You know what I mean? It's like you look backwards and you think, these are the signposts along the road.
You can't see it when you're in it.
You can't see it when you're in it. You can't even really plan it in some ways. There are times when you've got a decision to make, and sometimes you maybe chicken out. I've chickened out of a few things, but looking backwards, you can sort of see the map somehow, right?
Yeah.
And in your case, very much so, because of all you do now.
Now, with hindsight, absolutely. But what's been interesting for me is, as you know, I'm a big fan, like yourself, of the counterculture from the 60s, but obviously I wasn't born then. But reading back some of the accounts of these parties that I was a part of, and we were a part of, they read exactly like the 60s happenings. And a guy said to me during the launch party that we did in Brixton this summer, this is an amazing happening. And I said, I'll take that. I totally agree. And it hadn't really even occurred to me that obviously this is how people see it. And you don't get to define what you do. Other people do. And it seems to me that people are defining it as a countercultural happening moment, which is great.
Kev, thanks very much for coming back to the Bureau of Lost Culture.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well, there you have it. Links in the show notes to the Telepathic Fish compilation album. It's a really perfect Christmas present for yourself or a loved one to mellow you through the festive frenzy of this season. Thanks to Kev, it's always a pleasure to see and hang out with him. I'll put links to his work in the show notes too. He's amazingly prolific and creative. This is the last episode of 2025. It's been a very full year here. 25 conversations this year at the Bureau. I am learning so much. And thanks to all my guests this year. Thanks to the amazing Soho Radio. And of course, thanks most of all to you for listening. Let's keep listening. We'll be back in the new year with more of these tales from the other side. And I will see you further down the road, round the bend, over the hillsides, and wishing peace on this sad old world. We're going to finish with another track from the Telepathic Fish compilation. This is Days in the Trees by No Man, which featured Stephen Wilson from Porcupine Tree. It's got an amazing sample from Twin Peaks. Happy solstice. See you on the other side.
This is from a long time ago, is that okay? I was about 13 years old. 14 maybe. We were going to the Roundhouse to meet boys. I'm about 20 years old. And they're nice to us. And they make us feel like we're older. Rick asks if we want to go party. And Laura says yes. And all of a sudden I feel this knot building up in my stomach. But when Laura gets in the truck with Rick, I go anyway. There's a stream in the woods. Full moon, I think. It's pale and light out. Laura starts to dance around the boys. She begins to move her hips. Back and forth. And we take off our clothes. I know the boys are watching. Laura starts to kiss Josh and Rick. I don't know what to do, so I swim away. I feel like I want to run, but I don't. He kisses my hand, and then me. I can still feel that kiss. His lips are warm and sweet. My heart jumps. He's talking to me, but I can't hear him. It was the first time I ever fell in